Yale Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Quadcast, a Yale Divinity School podcast series focusing on issues related to religion, culture, and politics. In this episode, Emily Judd interviews Dr. Kyama Mugambi, professor of world Christianity at Yale Divinity School and author of the book A Spirit of Revitalization, Urban Pentecostalism in Kenya. Professor Mugambi weighs in on the critique that Christianity in Africa is a colonizer religion.
Africa has been Christian for a long time, and it was Christian before the concept or the idea of Europe, came into existence.
He argues that African traditional religions and Christianity share a few common beliefs.
And so they share a cosmological worldview.
And Professor Mugambi predicts that the rapid growth of Christianity in Africa will forever change global Christianity.
I think the flavor of Christianity globally will change in some way or be affected by a large African population in some way.
Since 2018, Africa has had more Christians than any other continent in the world, making it what some say the new center of global Christianity, world Christianity. How is Christianity in Africa impacting global Christianity?
Yeah, I think one of the main things is just that, the demographic mix of Christianity in the world. So 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 500 years ago, the demographic mix of Christianity would have been skewed towards Europe. And so now that is different. So when you count the number of Christians around the world, then Africa is likely to feature very prominently just because of the sheer numbers. But the other major effect or major impact of Christianity in Africa is the role of Africans going back to other places, back to Europe and going around to other places in the world and carrying their Christianity with them. So in Europe, you'll find some of the larger, very vibrant communities, Christian communities, will be diaspora Christianity of different kinds. Some of them are communities of Africans meeting with Africans within their own faith communities. But then there are others where you have Africans who've gone out and planted churches, and Europeans are going to those churches, or Africans who have gone to lead in parishes.
Picking up on that, a Pew Research Center survey found that Christians in Africa tend to pray and attend church at higher rates than Christians in most of the rest of the world. In every single African country surveyed, more than 60% of Christians said they attend church at least weekly. Why do you think Christians in Africa are more practicing, more pious than their Christian counterparts around the world?
Well, maybe a small modification there. So African Christians are practicing and pious, but there are counterparts that would have a similar high level of spirituality, for example, in Latin America and in some Asian expressions as well. A lot of Africa has challenging contexts. A lot of the democracies in Africa are young democracies. The fact that there is a lot of political unrest, countries are still defining themselves. We have ethnic questions where in the nation states that we have in Africa, people of different ethnicities are put together in one pot through artificial boundaries that did not exist 100 years ago, 150 years ago. And then we have economic challenges as well. Many of the countries are poor and subject to the demands of global inequalities. We have a very recent colonial history that we have to contend with. That complex of challenging contexts provides, a kind of, let me say, it invites, spiritual reflection as people navigate all those things and try to find, to make meaning.
And one of the things that you mentioned, you said, Africa's recent colonial history. Some people argue that Christianity in Africa is a colonizer religion. However, others say Africa is home to unique, ancient Christian denominations like Coptic Orthodox, Ethiopian Orthodox. What do you say?
Yeah. Okay. First of all, I think there's no denying there's the colonial history is very real, and we face the effects of colonialism now. And then moving beyond that, I think those who have a critique of Christianity as a missionary religion are not very far from the truth, in the sense that there are many examples of missionary complicity with the colonial enterprise. So on that count, yeah, there is a connection. But I think two important things to note here. I think the first is that Africa has been Christian for long. We have Christianity in Africa from the patristic period. This is 200 Common Era, 300, 400. This is before, for example, Europe existed as in the shape and the form that we know today. The charge that Christianity is a colonizer's religion, I think, is to that extent not sustainable, because we have these ancient denominations that you've talked about, Coptic Orthodox, that are still in existence today, Ethiopian Orthodox that is in existence today, and others. Do have Nubian Christianity that existed. Africa has been Christian for a long time, and it was Christian before the concept or the idea of Europe, came into existence.
The majority of people in Africa are Christian or Muslim. But there are some people who practice African traditional religions, which are typically polytheistic and have been characterized as pagan. Can the beliefs and practices found in African traditional religions be reconciled in any way with Christianity? Do you know any examples?
First of all, I think African traditional religions are not very well understood. Some have argued, and I agree, that African traditional religions do have spirits, but are generally monotheistic, let me say functionally monotheistic. Certain aspects of African traditional religion are incompatible with the Christian faith or Christian truth claims. As Christians, the understanding is that the ultimate agent of causality, the ultimate agent of salvation is Christ. Within Christian teaching, there is the understanding that the average Christian does have direct access to God through the Son. And again, that's very different with African traditional religion, because the ultimate creator, God, is inaccessible to human beings. So in that sense, there's a disparity. But having said that, there are ways in which African traditional religion and Christianity share some things. And so they share a cosmological worldview. And so the worldview that we find in Scripture is a worldview that is integrated, that sees the physical and the spiritual as interrelated. At least in the New Testament and the Old Testament is how, that's how Christianity, articulates itself. And so that concept is clearly understood, even by someone who is in African traditional religion. They'll understand that the spiritual and the physical are connected.
You're the author of a book titled A Spirit of Revitalization, Urban Pentecostalism in Kenya, which traces the history of Pentecostalism in Kenya. What has contributed to the growth of Pentecostalism, not only in Kenya, but in other parts of Africa?
Pentecostalism grows and is very has been very vibrant in Africa because it inspires a sense of connectivity amongst people, and kind of restores and safeguards the social connections, the communality or the kinship that people have one with another through the way it expresses itself in the different places.
But I'm curious, how has your experience of Pentecostalism in America, or more generally Christianity, how does that compare to your experience of Christianity in Africa? What do you see as, maybe one or two of the major differences?
One is the history. So the history is very specific, very linear.
In America.
Yeah, in America. In Africa, it's not linear at all. And so it's many different influences that come together, and a lot of spontaneous movements, come up in different places. So you can't quite pinpoint. And so Pentecostalism in Africa, in that sort of way, is very different because of the kind of spontaneous, and that is true of other parts of the world as well. So Pentecostalism did not just come from one place and move outwards. It's very, it emerged in different places. But in a wider sense, I would say, there are differences in the expressions of Christians here and in Africa. The sizes of some of the communities. So, for example, the Anglican Church or the Episcopalian churches that I have visited are very different in terms of they are much smaller than the ones I'm used to in Africa. The amount of energy in the services, there's a lot of energy in
Africa, right? Yeah, in the U.S. it's like less energy.
It's a different expression.
You recently joined the faculty at Yale Divinity School, and over the past year, you've brought in several speakers from African countries to speak with the students. Can you share your best highlight from your time so far?
The thing that I value most about being here at YDS is an opportunity to tell the story of African Christianity. So I enjoy doing that. I enjoy telling that story, and I appreciate the opportunity to tell that story, and to continue, with in the lineage of others who have always wanted the story of Christianity around the world to be told well at Yale.
I wanted to end on a question about the future of Christianity in Africa. The Pew Research Center has predicted that by the year 2060, so if I do the math, less than 40 years from now, 6 of the countries with the top 10 largest Christian populations will be in Africa. That's up from 3 in 2015. Kenya is going to be one of those countries, according to Pew Research Center. What predictions can you make about the future of Christianity in Africa, and do you think it's going to face any challenges?
Africa is going to be the most populous continent around that time. And so it's going to, Christianity will grow and Africa will remain Christian. Islam will also grow, but Christianity will be growing. I think the flavor of Christianity globally will change in some way or be affected by a large African population in some way. So that I would say that that's something that is likely to happen. In terms of the challenges, I think the challenges will be similar to what we've seen in history, where whenever Christianity has grown and become a majority religion or become a major religious player. As one who researches and teaches history of Christianity in Africa and around the world, these are things that we see. We saw it in Europe. We see these same tensions playing out in America right now with the culture wars and so on. And in Africa, it will play itself out in a different way, as now Christianity has become the dominant religion, with many countries, having 70%, 80% Christians in them. So So that in the future, those are some of the things that we're going to see playing themselves out. But I am hopeful, because what I've seen in history has been that there will always be a force from within, and that's the thing about the Christian message. There's a force from within, that a very strong force from within that seeks to remain true to the core tenets, the core message. And when that is impossible within the social, cultural, and political structure, then a reform movement comes out from within to try and restore itself. And we've seen that happen over and over in history, within church history in Europe, in all these different other places. So I expect to see some of that in the future of Christianity in Africa.
Very interesting. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insight and your thoughts today on this important topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.